We will waste no time in bringing in a man to help us break down the draft class of your Buffalo Bills. It is the senior producer from NFL Films, one Greg Cosell, joining us, who was busy taking in the draft this past weekend. Greg, how you doing?
Chris, Steve, how you guys doing?
We're doing great.
Thanks for coming on earlier in the week. We didn't want to wait till Friday because by then this draft is going to be completely old and stale.
Oh, by then we're doing mock drafts of 2022, right?
Exactly.
There are some people that do that the next day,
and we've got grades on this draft as well. Everybody's got projecting how these drafts are, how the players are going to pan out. Everything. We've all got it figured out now that we know who's who.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I know exactly how next year's draft is going to play out.
Right. So let's begin here, Greg, because this was something that I was wondering about, and I'm curious to get your take on it. So we know that both Greg Rousseau and Carlos Basham, Boogie Basham, as he wants to be called, we've learned, they're not bend the edge, flatten out pass rushers.
No.
They're more power guys or speed to power, whatever you want to call it. And Brandon Beane said over the weekend he sees them both as left defensive ends as their first position. How does that work here with the glut of players you now have?
It's that might be a question for Brandon Beane.
Yeah,
whose investment portfolio is probably a little larger than mine. So that would be a good question for him. But as we discussed, I guess when I was on. Chris, with you and Maddie the other night during the draft, is they seem to have a type of player that they like. You can go back to last year with A.J. Epinesa. They like big in terms of height. All these guys are tall. Clearly, Rousseau, Epinesa. I guess Basham is over 6'3", so that would be considered a pretty good size as well. As you said, they're not bendy. They're not flexible. They're speed to power. They're strong, and they're multi-positional. And I don't know if Brandon Beane spoke about that, but when you do go to your sub front, which of course Buffalo played 90% of their snaps last year, New Year, we don't know if that'll be the case again, but that was 90% of their defensive snaps a year ago. They were in a nickel defense. Then you have a lot of versatility and flexibility with those players as to where they can line up. I'm sure that factored into their thinking. If you're speaking base defense, assuming last year as a template, that's 10% of their snaps. Yeah. So that's really not a high number.
Right, and when you look at
the other, don't have to worry about it.
Right, exactly.
On the other side of the ball, they went and got two guys. The same thing. They got guys of a type. Both the offensive tackles they grabbed are 6'8" or 6'7" plus. Spencer Brown,
3'11",
Tommy Doyle. I mean, these guys are. They're the same size, same look. I mean, what does that give you on the edge, and why do you think that that's kind of a type that the Bills have coveted?
That would be hard for me to answer, but they clearly do because both guys are 6'8". Brown is more athletically built than Doyle. Brown, to me, was a fascinating watch. Obviously, he played at a lower level of college football, so that's why people like to use the word raw, whatever that word means. Very often, I think it just means that a guy played at a lower level of college football. But I thought Spencer Brown was as talented an offensive tackle prospect as there was in this draft, and I mean that honestly. And again, we never know how drafts play out until players play in the league for a number of years. But this kid is really, really athletic. He's got long arms. He's got a tremendous wingspan. He ran under a 5'40", which just speaks to his athleticism. To me, he's the prototype for the position. And one thing I noticed in studying his tape, given what the Bills do offensively, the Bills are a passing team, and they have deep drops, which is not what a lot of NFL teams do, but they have Josh Allen drop deep. Spencer Brown had a lot of what we call vertical pass sets, which is what you need for deeper drops. And he was really, really good at those. So I thought after I watched Brown and then I saw where he was drafted, I said, wow, that's a really, really good fit because what he does really well fits the Bills. And he's just, if this kid develops, and I'm sure he's a good kid, I'm sure there's no red flags with this kid. I just think that he has a chance to really be a special player down the road.
Yeah, I mean, Brandon Beane essentially tabbed him as their swing tackle day one. With a good camp, I wonder if he could really cause some problems. I mean, they just signed the two projected starting tackles to extensions in the last calendar year. We know Darrell Williams has played close to half his career at guard as well. Spencer Brown wows people in training camp. He could be at right tackle. Darrell Williams could be at guard, and somebody could be out of luck.
Right. I mean, Deion Dawkins is going to be the left tackle. I don't think we have a concern about that. But right tackle, I mean, and that's what Brown played, so there's no transition involved.
Yeah.
It's not as if he has to move from left to right. He played right tackle at Northern Iowa. And, this is a guy, I know, Chris, you've researched him. He played tight end and D-line in high school. Yeah. He also played basketball and baseball. I mean, this kid is a highly athletic guy. And the thing that really stood out to me is I thought for a guy who was that tall, I thought he was kind of a natural knee bender. He was not a straight-up guy. He was just an athletic guy, and he had reactive athleticism. So if there was a quick move, he could react to it. Now, his last college game was not his best against James Madison, but overall, I think he's a really high-level prospect.
Yeah, Greg, you're Brownie's way ahead of you. He's got the guy in red zone targets already. He thinks they're going to move him to an eligible receiver and have him go.
Well, you know what?
Zone.
I could see that happening. That's a great point.
They've thrown touchdown passes to Deion Dawkins. Why not throw it to the guy that's 5 inches taller?
Yeah. So
he's probably a better athlete than Lee Smith, who caught some of those, right?
We were talking about that the other day, Steve.
All right.
Yeah, okay. You brought that up with Lee Smith.
Yeah, pump the brakes already. Would you let the guy get to training camp? Let's go back and individually. Let's talk a little bit about Boogie Basham. He's the second guy. They took two defensive ends right in a row. I got to admit, I like the picks, but I was surprised by the same position 2 times in a row. Boogie Basham is the guy that doesn't fit this type in that he's only 6'3.5" rather than 6'8". But let's talk about his skill set individually. I mean, I know you like Spencer Long at right tackle. What about Boogie Basham, his ability to, in the run defense? What kind of overall defensive lineman are they getting?
Yeah, I think you're dealing with a guy, and it's funny what Brandon Beane said, because I thought that Basham was just kind of your old school strong side D end. That's what he struck me as, and it sounds like Brandon Beane essentially said the same thing. I thought for the most part he showed good hand usage as a run defender, had some subtle but efficient hand usage. The thing that you notice with him is he's got heavy hands. I would call him methodically relentless, not explosive, but methodically relentless. He got moved inside a lot as a 3-technique pass rusher. His success as a pass rusher stemmed more from leverage and power, from his hand usage, from competitive effort, from second reaction, not from the fact that you went, wow, look at those great moves. So, he was, like I said, he struck me as kind of an old school strong side DN back in the day, when the tight end always lined up on the right side on the line of scrimmage. That to me is what Boogie Basham was. I think he's a guy with a great playing personality. He'll give it his all on every snap. Probably fits the culture of this organization. It seems they're looking for those guys. I know for a fact, that Rousseau is a great kid. Epinesa, I know, is a great kid. I'm sure Basham, it sounds like he's that guy as well. So not only do they want to type physically, I think they want to type from an organizational standpoint.
Marquez Stevenson is an interesting player from a couple of standpoints, Greg, not only because of his return ability, and with Andre Roberts now in Houston, there's a value there. He'll probably be competing with Isaiah McKenzie for a return job right away as a rookie. I know he played mostly out of the slot, but he is in stark contrast to what Cole Beasley is in the slot here in this offense. Beasley's a quick direction, quick separation, quick option for Josh Allen guy, and that's not who Marquez Stevenson is. So maybe just lay out how and why he's different from Cole Beasley.
Well, this kid's a vertical guy for the most part. Even though he was 5'10", I remember watching him. I watched him last summer, believe it or not, from 2019. And, you never know what the numbers are when you look on the internet. So now we know he's 5'10". But he had the look and feel of a strider. He just looked like a guy who was a little taller. He showed excellent ball tracking ability on vertical routes, caught the ball easily. He ran by and got on top of college corners. I thought he was physical and competitive in the middle of the field. He attacked the ball knowing he would get hit. He got from 0 to 60 in a heartbeat. He could run away from the defense. He's an interesting guy to me, and it did not surprise me when I saw that the Bills drafted him, because obviously they're a throwing football team and they've got a quarterback that can throw it down the field. His game is built on straight line speed and the ability to run away from defenders both vertically, horizontally, and run after catch. He's not going to run, it's funny you mentioned Beasley, Chris, because he's not that guy. He's not going to run those kind of quickness routes, the pivot routes, the whip routes. He runs vertical routes. He runs crossers. He runs the routes that maximize his speed.
So is he better? So should he be lined up at the Z then, or?
I could see him again. He's a rookie, so let's.
I know.
As Steve said, let's pump the brakes.
I am getting excited.
I don't want to sit here and say that, wow, week one, this guy he's it. But I mean, I could see them thinking that he's John Brownish.
Okay,
right. He runs.
John Brown was, he was a small guy too.
He reminds me of the old receivers, a little bigger than he is, but the old guy Roy Green.
Okay.
Wow. I remember Roy Green.
Look at that. Roy Green you just pulled out.
He runs a little bit like Roy.
I love that. That was back in the days of Air Coryell with the Cardinals.
Yeah, well, I'm an old guy.
With Pat Kelly.
Let's talk. I want to talk to you a little bit more about one of the other guys, Tommy Doyle. He's a guy that's a lot like Spencer Brown. One's 6'8", 314, one's 6'8", 320. But Tommy Doyle dropped all the way down to the 160. 161 overall from Miami of Ohio. Both guys come from smaller schools. Is Tommy Doyle the same guy except just a little less athletic than the basketball player Spencer Brown?
Yeah, he's less athletic, but he's got outstanding size and length. I would say his athleticism is plus, not great. He struggled. His issue, and the reason he's not Spencer Brown, and the reason why he got drafted where he did, is he struggled a bit in pass protection, particularly at the top of the pass rush arc. He would kind of lose his poise, his composure. His hand usage would sort of fade. He'd bend. He'd forward lean a lot. So he needs technique work on pass pro. You can always teach a guy technique, but he's got experience playing both tackle positions. As I said, he is a plus athlete. He just needs technique work. But he's, again, another guy who's a good prospect. And I believe he played 4 seasons. Obviously, he only played 3 games this past season, but he ended up playing 4 seasons at Miami of Ohio.
Yeah, 2 at right tackle, 2 at left tackle.
Yeah.
Damar Hamlin, I got to tell you, Greg, just watching Pitt tape on a number of players, there's an edge to the way that their defense plays. Like every guy on that side of the ball for them, they all play with an edge, physical, borderline nasty. I mean, I'm not surprised that over the last few years, you've seen as many Pitt players get drafted, maybe not at the top of the draft, but, through the middle rounds and the back end. I understand why coaches like these Pitt kids. They play with an edge, and Hamlin seems to have that.
Yeah, the issue with Hamlin is not that at all. In fact, he's a smart player. He's a savvy player. And obviously they've got 2 safeties like that who were not viewed as great athletes coming out. In fact, Poyer, as you guys know, I believe was a 7th-round pick coming out as a corner. So you're dealing with Hamlin. He's aggressive. He's competitive. He's more downhill. He's got really good recognition. He's got a quick trigger. He just doesn't possess the play speed and range you'd ideally would like to see on the back end. So then you start to think, okay, how does that impact what he can become? Is he going to struggle in coverage? Can he match wide receivers on vertical routes? Can he match up man-to-man on tight ends? These are all questions that you don't specifically know the answer to, but there are discussions in your draft meetings, and it's the reason he's drafted where he is. You'll love the way he plays. I mean, this kid is fun to watch. I mean, his game's built on recognition, quick reaction, forward movement. He's just, in some ways, I think to what Jordan Fuller did with the Rams last year as a rookie in 2020. Fuller was a late-round pick. He was thought not to quite have the athletic ability. He played in a defense that played a lot of cover 4, which the Rams did, and he was very, very good in that. So the main question really with Hamlin as you transition him is whether his athletic limitations drop him below the level where you think he's good enough to start, or the other elements of his game can rise him to the level where you believe he can be an effective starter.
One of the things I think about evaluating safety is that their position is so cerebral and you have to have so much recognition, and so much of what makes you good goes on between your ears. It's really hard to evaluate when a guy's really ahead of the play or when he just falls into a play, or the quarterback just decides to target his guy. Is he really in the right spot? Because there's nobody, they almost have to find offensive players to guard. You don't really know it's hard to discern what their responsibility is as a safety. So how do you get around that as an evaluator when you're looking at a safety to know exactly what you're looking at and if he's really good or if he's just a little bit fortunate?
It's harder in college, Steve, because the field is different with the hash marks.
Right.
So he was the field safety in split safety alignment. So he played to the wide side of the field in college. And the wide side of the field in college, as you guys know, is really wide. So it's now he moved and played a lot more boundary safety when Paris Ford. I don't know whether he got hurt or he just opted out. It's after a certain number of games, but. So that's a hard question to know. It's a good question. It's a really hard question to know the answer to.
Greg, I know you didn't see enough of Rashad Wildgoose, but Jack Anderson, the Texas Tech guard, is a guy that was highly decorated even in high school.
I
mean, the guy he had like 40 scholarship offers, and was a 3-year starter, I think, for Tech. So I think the general consensus is you don't worry about his pass pro experience with as much as they throw it around down there. But what about him in the run game? Is there enough tape of him to get a good evaluation of him in that area?
Yeah. I mean, this guy's got core strength. He generated power on down blocks. He kept his feet running to sustain those blocks. He competed. When you play inside, you want to see guys really compete hard. Hey, I'm not an offensive line guru, certainly not when it comes to center and guard. So I'm not going to sit here and say I know exactly what he is or what he isn't. In the tape I watched, he didn't strike me, and of course, obviously that was the case because of where he was drafted, but he didn't strike me as a guy that was a high-level prospect. I thought he was pretty stiff, kind of regimented. I thought he was a confined space player, not particularly athletic. Thought he played a little upright, which also led to some stiffness. So again, it's where he's drafted. If he didn't have these things that show up on tape, he would have been drafted higher. So, that's what happens when you start getting into later round picks. They all come with flaws, and then it comes down to coaching and what they're being asked to do within the context of a particular system that they're in.
So, Greg, I know he did take center reps at the Senior Bowl.
Which makes sense to me.
Could you see that as a transition for him and maybe a better fit than guard?
Yeah, again, without being the expert on it, I could understand that for sure, because he's not really a mover to me. He's a stiffer guy, and I think maybe playing center would help him out.
Right. You good, Steve?
I think
you got all your questions answered?
All good, man. We're not going to see you again for a while now.
I know.
We don't have
I know. I mean, it's going to be tough. I know it's going to be tough for me not to visit with you guys every week now.
Yeah, but we'll see you back in the fall. So enjoy your time off from our hijinks here every week. I'm sure you'll enjoy that. It'll certainly give you more time to watch tape through the course of the summer.
What is next on your calendar, Greg?
I actually have to do, go sort of back into the NFL films mode. I've got to do a highlight film or a preview film of a team with a new coach. That's next on my agenda. And then I found out I have a ton of vacation time that was accrued from last year. So, you guys know I'm nuts anyway, but I'm not really going anywhere. So with all that vacation time, I'll probably watch tape.
Okay.
Wow.
I know, Steve. I'm a little crazy. It's okay.
We gotta get Greg a fishing pole or something. We gotta find something for him to do.
No. Hey, there's not a lot of difference between standing on the pier with a fishing pole, and fishing and looking stupid. So I won't be doing that.
Yeah. All right. Well, enjoy the time that you do have. If you do something besides watching film, we'll see you in the fall. We look forward to catching up with you back in September.
Greg. All right, guys. You too. Really appreciate it.